A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When the Magi had departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you. Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him." Joseph rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt. He stayed there until the death of Herod, that what the Lord had said through the prophet might be fulfilled. "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod had died, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Rise, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead." He rose, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go back there. And because he had been warned in a dream, he departed for the region of Galilee. He went and dwelt in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Again, we continue to celebrate the great feast of Christmas these days, so wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and so happy that you're with us, both our parishioners and our visitors as well. The church always celebrates the first Sunday after Christmas the Feast of the Holy Family, because, of course, the arrival of Jesus is what made the Holy Family holy, right? And he's also what makes our families holy. When we put Jesus right smack in the middle of our home and our family life, everything gets better, because Jesus plus anything is better than it was before. He knows how to make things holy. And so today we celebrate this Feast of the Holy Family, praying for our own families and asking the Lord to give us the great gift. You know, Paul VI once wrote that there are three things that we learn from the school of Nazareth. The school of Nazareth was, of course, where Jesus lived for 30 years. Think about that. He stayed with his family, obeying his parents, working as a carpenter, living a normal, ordinary life for 30 years. So he knows what family life is like, doesn't he? And then, of course, his public ministry, which led to his death and resurrection. Three things that we learn from the Holy Family, the School of Nazareth. Number one, we learn from its silence. Family life sometimes is not very glamorous. Like, tell me what I don't know, Father. What I mean by that is, yes, you have weddings and you have baptisms and you have graduations, and those are all great days. But there are a lot more days of just doing the daily work of doing the wash and preparing meals and taking care of children and dealing with emotions, etc., etc. And family life is just not that glamorous. So we learn from the silence of family life. As Mother Teresa used to always say, everything that matters grows and moves in silence. A new baby inside of its mother's womb grows in silence. The planets move around the sun in silence. And so also holiness happens in silence. Number two, we learn about family life, which means that everybody has to do their part to make a family work, don't they? And so, as my mother used to always say, it doesn't always surround or revolve around you. You know, and children have to learn that we have to work together as a family. And that's the third thing we learn about family life, and that is hard work, chores, a work ethic, because work is what God has made us to do that. He's made us to work and to use the gifts and talents that we have to better our world and our family. I want you to think about making a resolution today, and you be praying about what it is, that every family here would do one thing, one concrete thing in 2026, to put Jesus more squarely in the center of your family. I just want you to be thinking about that as we go through. Now, with Thanksgiving, we always ask people at Thanksgiving, what are you most thankful for? And what are the usual responses? Faith, family, and usually health, right? Are kind of probably the three. Others, some other things. But you know what? Family always makes the top three, don't they? In other words, we intuit, even though our families are not perfect, and we know that, but we intuit family life is such an important part of who we are and what God is calling us to be. You might remember the what's called the riddle of the Sphinx, and it's a famous literary riddle that comes from the Oedipus Rex. And the riddle was, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, 3 legs in the evening, and no legs at night? And of course, the riddle was presented to Oedipus Rex by the Sphinx, and of course, all who failed to solve the riddle were eaten by the Sphinx. So it was an important riddle. But the answer, of course, is a human person, isn't it? 4 legs crawling, right, as a baby, 2 legs as an adult, 3 legs with a cane when we're become elderly, and no legs when we die. It is the plan of God that all human beings go through stages of life, from infancy and childhood to adolescence, right? Young adults, and finally to become elderly. I used to have a sweet little African-American lady, holy lady, and when I was pastor of St. Peter Claver in Macon, and she was always so cute. She would always say, once a man, twice a child, Father. Once a man, twice a child, And she was making the point of something she had seen many times, is that sometimes that when we reach the age, when we become elderly, we can start to become like children again. Now, isn't that what the Bible says? We have to become like little children to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? And we don't want to become childish. We want to become childlike. But I can remember my mother when she was in her 80s, after supper at night, she would say to me, take me to get a snowball. And I can say, oh my gosh, that's what I used to say to her when I was 5 years old. Isn't that interesting how life moves in these communities? The family, defined by St. John Paul II, is an intimate community of life and love. It's a place where, first of all, what is intimacy? Intimacy is knowledge and love of the other who has knowledge and love of you. And children learn the appropriate responses of different persons to intimacy in their life. Now, the most essential and primary intimacy is mother and child, who conceives a child and gives birth and nurses that child. And then the second intimacy is with one's father, showing the children that he loves and he protects and setting that example. Appropriate intimacy with brothers and sisters, siblings, right? Taking care of one another. As my family used to always say, we take care of each other in this family. Those kinds of things with friends. And so there's a different level of intimacy, isn't there, in each of these kind of phases in life. And of course, we know that we learn in our families some very important lessons that we need, especially just for being normal, healthy, holy persons. First of all, we learn that we are loved. How many times does a mother and father say to their children as they're growing up, I love you, again and again? And that child begins to understand love means they take care of me, they protect me, they guide me. And of course, then we're taught about the one who loves us truly the most, who loves us and takes care of us and protects us. Secondly, children learn in the family that they are safe, that they're secure in their room, in their bed, that their family is protected and they can live without fear. They learn hope. They look forward to birthdays and Christmas and vacations, and they get the idea that things are going to happen good in my life, and I can be hopeful that good things are going to happen in this world and in the next. We learn about rules, right? We have to learn that certain things are done and certain things are not done. Oftentimes, our children will say, when their parents give them a directive, the children will say, well, why? And of course, parents will sometimes say, because I said so. Now, is that valid? Oh yeah, it's one of the commandments of God. Children are to obey and love and respect their parents. But I think it's a wiser way or another approach to say, because Jesus says so. Because, if the only reason a child obeys you is because you say so, what happens when they leave the nest and you're no longer there to say so? And so the correct formation of conscience is because I have a relationship with my mom and dad. They've done so much for me and loved me and cared for me. I owe them my obedience and my love. And then our conscience is formed, not just, oh darn, because I got caught telling that lie, but I feel bad because it's wrong to tell a lie, because I have a relationship with God and with people around me, those to whom I love. We learn education in the family. Parents are the first educators of their children, and we learn how to work. And that's very important, that we learn a good work ethic in our families, isn't it? Everybody pulls together to make that family work. So we always say we don't let our children play out on I-16. Obviously, why? Because we are protecting them. In a similar way, we don't let our children lie or curse or steal or cheat. Why? Because we are protecting them. Christianity makes people function well, live securely and happily, and become the men and the women, the Christian men and women that God is calling us to be. One thing that we always learn in our families is what we call public propriety. What is public propriety? There's certain things that are just not fitting and proper for a Christian man or Christian gentleman or Christian lady to do. And so manners, yes sir, no sir, please, thank you, I'm sorry. These things are very, very important. One of my brothers was telling me when he first got married, he had 4 children at the time, and all like under the age of maybe 8 or 9 years old. And so it was a hard time, one of those times in our families when the children take so much of our time to care for and to protect. And he said one morning, Saturday morning, he said he woke up, nobody was feeling good, it was pouring down rain. And he said, his wife and I, they're looking at each other like, oh my gosh, we're going to be in the house all day with these kids today. It's going to be a long day. And something happened. One said something to the other. And my brother said to me, which is very, very rare, he said, I kind of got angry and I barked at my wife. I spoke to her, I raised my voice, and she got angry and she kind of barked back. And he said immediately we turned and the children were just looking at us like, oh my gosh, this was not real. We don't see this very often. Is everything? And he said, my brother, I said, I was so mad and just frustrated, but he said it was pouring down rain. But he said, I went out in the backyard and I just started walking around the backyard. And he said, I prayed my rosary. He said, I was getting soaking wet. But he said, I just walked around the backyard. And he said, and after I calmed down, he said, I went back in. And as soon as I walked in, all the children immediately looked at me like, what's going to happen now? And he said, I went to my wife and I said, please forgive me. I'm sorry I raised my voice at you. I lost my patience. And she said, I forgive you. Please forgive me for raising my voice at you. And he said, and all the 4 children just went, whew. And I remember saying to my brother, probably you taught your children a more valuable lesson that day than all the other days when you gave them the via positiva. I said, because what you taught them is that sometimes good people who do love the Lord are good parents. Sometimes they lose their temper, they do something or say something. But Christians ask forgiveness, and Christians grant forgiveness to one another. As I worked in the seminary, one of the things, especially because of the breakdown of the family, I always ask the young men, how many of you had supper every night with your families? We had supper every night growing up with our families, and sometimes 3 meals a day, And I noticed that less and less, sometimes less than half of the seminarians there would say that they just had a family meal and a conversation every night. And when the family begins to break down, you lose other things, that just an understanding of public propriety, just how to be a gentleman, you know. And so I always remind our seminarians, all of us, what our children, we have to understand how we're being perceived by others around us. This is a very important growth in our social life, isn't it? That we understand this. And, we don't expect a 2-year-old to act like an 8-year-old. And we don't say to a 2-year-old, stop acting like a 2-year-old. We say to our 6-year-old, stop acting like a 2-year-old. Are you with me? Why? This is called moral gradualism. We expect our children to go through stages of maturity, to learn, to grow, to be selfless, to pray, to work, to do their part, to share their toys, etc., etc. I remember having a great psychology class when I was in college, and our teacher was so on target in so many things. But I remember once she said, there's 2 things every little boy needs to hear from their father. They need to hear, number 1, I love you, and number 2, I'm proud of you. And even when they're 50 years old, boys need to hear that from their fathers. And then she said, but little girls are different. Every little girl, she needs 3 things from her father. She needs to hear, number 1, I love you. Number 2, you're beautiful. And number 3, physical hug, kiss, healthy physical attention from their father. And she said, and when these things are done within the family, those boys and girls generally grow in a healthy way. They're not out there looking for someone else to tell her that she's beautiful or that she's loved. We all know the age of emancipation is a tough age, but it's God's plan. It has to happen. When kids get 16, 17, they're being pushed, so to speak, by the Lord. They have to grow up. They have to move out. They have to go to college, right? And this is also part of growing up. And this is a time when sometimes, often, teenagers can be a little disrespectful and things like that to their parents. But this is part of the law of gradualism. So we ask the Lord today to give us the gift. This is where faith really grows. The safest place in the world for faith to be planted and to grow is in the human family. Children pray like their parents pray. Why? Because they're parrots, right? They listen and they learn and they gain the gift of faith. Again, there's a lot of ways God gives us the gift of faith, but his primary way is through mom and dad in the human family. That's the primary way faith comes to us and grows. And that's what we pray, that the Lord, bad things are going to happen in our families, and we come at Thanksgiving and at Christmas, and all the family comes together, and, we say, do you all remember when? Everybody goes, oh my gosh, that was terrible, or that was so funny. We have these memories, don't we, of our families, and some are good and some are not so good. Even the perfect family had to flee into Egypt in the middle of the night because someone was trying to kill their child. Family life is not easy, but it is of God. And so let's put Jesus in the center of our families by praying together, and he will make our families so much more holy families. Amen.